Hello guys, so in today's video this is what we're going to be creating. We're going to be creating this nice marker with content. We have this marker, we have this pole. The pole is right on the map. We have this content viewer, we have the image, and we have a little bit of text over here. So in this video what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to create this from scratch. We're going to learn how to create this from scratch. So to do that, let's head over to our new file. We call this file example1.html. So this is just a basic HTML file with our header and this search. So with the HTML, we have our bootstrap. We have our bootstrap. We have a map.css file. So let's create something new. Let's create example1.css. Example1.css. So there's nothing there. Let's make it example1.css. Then we have material icons. So we have fonts.google, apis.com, font families, the Google, the material icons. Then we have the polyfill. So we have https polyfill.io, v3 polyfill.main.js, and the feature is enabled to the default. We have nothing in our style for now. So let's clear this. Now when we look at our header, we have our navigation, which is this navigation with the blue area, and we have our map area. This is going to be our map area. And then when we look at our JavaScript, we have Bootstrap JavaScript, we have jQuery 3.6, we have HTTPS. So technically this is three.main.js. We have gltf loader.js, and we have the Google Maps API keys. Now with the API keys, because we're going to use advanced markers together with the WebGL, what we need to do is we need to the libraries, we have the places, and then you put a comma, and then you put markers, because we're going to use an extra or an advanced marker systems. And then the callback is init map, and the version is beta, because the advanced marker is still in beta mode. So then you add a defer so that our code this code loads before our marker loads. Now we're going to use some Axios, but in this tutorial we are not going to go into the Axios. And this is our example1.js. So this is our example1.js, and there's nothing in it. And let's get started. So these are our three files that we're going to use to create. The first thing we need to do is we need to grab our map. All right, we need to grab our map and show it. So grabbing the map, the first thing we need to do is let's create a map variable. Let's say map is equal to, so let's just say let's just say let map. All right, we're going to set its value later on. The next thing that we need to do is we need to create our init map function. We need to create our init map function. Let's see how much time we have. So let me set it to 25. So let's create our init map function, and function. Okay, so the name of the function is init map. So this init map is coming from this callback is equal to init map. All right, that's where it's coming from. So we're not returning anything for now. Inside our init map, let's create some default latitude and longitude for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we're going to grab data from the database. So in this tutorial, let's say latitude is equal to, let's say, 40.75. Okay, and our longitude is equal to, let's say, negative 73.81. Okay, now let's create options for our map. So let's say options, map options. Let's just say map options. This is going to create, this is going to hold all the parameters that we need for our map. Okay. So the center of our map is going to be, we have our latitude, it's our latitude, comma, then we have our longitude, is going to be our longitude. Great. Now that we have our center, let's create a zoom. And zoom, let's say 18. We want to zoom in. So let's say 18. Next thing we want is the map type ID. So the map type ID is tell the map what type of map are we looking at. So we have Google Maps map type ID road map. Okay, so we need a road map for this tutorial. Next thing we need to tell our map is our map ID itself. Okay, so map ID, you create these map IDs inside your console. I believe you know how to create map IDs. We're going to have a new tutorial for that. So our map ID is 48 12, and this is linked to my domain. So you know when you try to use it, it's not going to work. So you create a map ID 41 12 A7 E8 32 30 FB8 and F. So this is my map ID for this tutorial. Now the heading, which is the angle that we want our map to be. So we want it to be at 0 degrees angle. Now the last thing we're going to need is the tilt. So we're just going to tilt our map to 52 degrees. Okay. Now that we have our map options, let's go ahead and invoke the map on our page. So go ahead and say map is equal to new google.maps dot map. Now let's say document.getElement by ID to grab our element on our HTML page. So it's the ID is map. So let's confirm that. So we have our map area and the ID is map. So this is where we want to render the map. So now that we have our map, the next thing we need to do is throw in our map options. So great. We have thrown in our map options. Now let's save it and let's see what's going on. So let's go to our console. Now console is saying init map is not a function. Okay, so we need to invoke our init map. Okay, there is a way to do that. So let's say init map example 1. So let's go to let's say latitude. It says init maps not function. Let's go, let's check it out. Init map, so this is int map, so we need to add an I. So we have our init map, that's initialized map. Okay, so let's see. Cannot read properties of undefined road map. So it says it cannot read this property. So let's see what's wrong. Google. So map type ID is google.maps.map type ID. So this map starts with a capital. Okay, map type ID. So let's refresh. And I think that's it. We should have our map. We're not having any error from the system. So let's, our map should be viewing from now. Let's see, map, Google, the map document, get element by ID. We have our map options. Okay, so let's see. Okay, now the last thing that we need is to give our map some width and some height. Okay, so it's good to make these errors. So let's say, let's grab our map. Let's say the width is 100, view width, and the height. So we wanted to take the full screen, so we're going to calculate. So 100 view height minus, so 100 view height minus this. So how tall is this? This is 56 pixels, so minus 56 pixels. And margin top, we need to give it a margin top. Top is 56 pixels. Great. So it's going to take our screen. Oh, we don't need to give it a margin top. It's going to adjust itself automatically. So let's say, great. So we have our map. The next thing we need is we need to make sure that our map ID is working, because our map ID isn't working right now. So let's grab our map ID from one of the JavaScript files that we have, so we don't make any mistake. So let's replace it. Let's refresh it. And boom. Okay. So now that we have our map, the next thing we need to do is we need to initialize our WebGL. Okay, we need to initialize our WebGL. Now, how do we initialize our WebGL? Let's dive right into it. The first thing we need to do is let's create a function. Come down, let's create a function called init WebGL. Okay, init WebGL overlay view. Now, init WebGL overlay view, what is it going to do? We need to throw in map, the parameter. Now we need to call this function anytime we load our map. Okay, anytime we load our map, we need to call this function. Now inside this function, before we'll be able to use this function, the first thing we need to do is we need to call the three.js. This is three.js. Okay, three.js, we need to make sure that we have access to our three.js. So let's create a constant. Let's call it 3. Okay, it's equal to window dot 3. What this simple line is going to do is it's going to tap into this three.js and it's going to grab everything that's in there and store it into 3. So let's log it and let's see what's going on. So log 3. Okay, now let's refresh our page and let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3. Okay, so let's see what we got. So this is our 3 Now we have all these stuffs inside three.js that we're going to use. Now that we have our three.js, we need to go ahead and create our WebGL. So in our WebGL, the first few things we're going to create is the scene. So we're going to say let scene. Let's see, renderer. Let's say camera and the loader. Great. So let's save this. The next thing we need to create is the overlay view. So we need to create a constant, call it the WebGL overlay view. It's equal to new Google Maps WebGL overlay view. Great. WebGL overlay view. Now that we have a WebGL overlay view, next thing we need to do is instances that we need to call on this WebGL overlay view. So the first one is, let's grab our WebGL overlay view, this variable, and let's say dot on add. Okay, so anytime we want to add something to our overlay view, let's create an arrow function. Now we're going to have on add and on context restored, on draw, and yeah, so we need these three stuff. So we're going to have on add, going to have on context restored. So let's say on context restored, and going to have on draw. Great. And the last thing we need to do is we need to set it. So WebGL overlay view dot set map. Okay, and then we put in our map. Great. So these are the three steps that we're going to do. We're going to create some code for this on add, on context restored, on draw, and set map. Now let's go through each one individually. Now on add, first thing we need to do is we need to initialize our scene. So our scene is equal to new three dot scene, right? So we have our scene. Next thing we need to initialize is our camera. Okay, so camera is equal to new three dot perspective. So first thing we need to see is we need to set a perspective camera. Perspective camera. Okay. Now that we have our scene and our camera, let's create some light. So let's just create something called ambient light. So let's create a simple new three dot ambient light. Ambient light. So ambient light is just going to be some white stuff. So this is going to cover the map while the map is loading. So it's going to be 0 times f. This is 6f. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the opacity is going to be something like 0.75. Great. Next thing we need to do, so this is just some soft white color. Next thing we need to do is let's add this color to our scene. So this color is going to load while our map is about to load. So scene.add. ambient light. Okay, great. Let's close it. Now the next thing we need to create is we need to create some direction light. Okay, so let's create a constant directional light equal to new three dot directional light. Three dot directional light. So we just copy the same stuff here. Then in this one, let's make it 0.25. Great. Now the next thing that we need to do is we need to set this direction light to a position. So let's say directional light dot position dot set. So we set it. It has a three perspective. So the first one is 0.5. The second one is -1. So -1 and 0.5. And the next thing we need to do is we need to load our GLTF. That is our pole. Okay, so let's just say load in the model. So now that we want to load the model, we need to initialize our loader variable. Is equal to new three dot GLTF loader. Great. So this GLTF loader is a combination of three.js and GLTF. So when we come here, we have our GLTF JS and we have our three.js. So this is just a combination of these two libraries. Now we need a source for our poll. Okay, so our poll that we showed, so we need a source for it. It's just a 3D file. So let's create a variable called source, and source is equal to source is in this file. It's in assets, it's in 3D, and we have this 3.glb. So it's a GLB file. It can also be a GLTF file. So we say assets, have 3D, have 3.glb. Now that we have our source, the next thing that we need to do is to load this source. So we say loader.load, and we load our source. And the source is going to be loaded in a GLTF format. So we say GLTF with an arrow function. And then inside of gltf.scene, so we need to scale these this file that we need to put it straight on the map. So gltf.scene.scale scale. So the scale is technically like the length, width, and height. I think it's length, breadth, and width. Yeah, something like that. Scale.set gltf.scene.scale.set. So let's give it 10 by 10 by 10. We need to set the rotation, how we want this to rotate. So when we look at our previous example, when we rotate this, you see it's straight up. So we need to rotate it. So gltf dot scene dot rotation. This is a rotation. The first one was the height and width. This is the rotation. The rotation, we need to rotate it on the x axis. is equal to, let's say, math dot py, right? So math dot py. Let's close it. Let's go next. The next thing we need to do is let's get out of this and let's add the scene. So now that we have created all our scene for this, so let's close it. Now that we've created our scene for all this, the next thing we need to do is we need to add the scene. So we say scene dot add. So we need to add our gltf dot scene. Great. Now we're done with this. The next thing we need to do is we need to come to the on context restored. On context restore. This is just a very simple few lines of code. Before that, let's run our code to see if we have any error. So let's come back. Let's run. So we have one error. It says WebGL overlay view is not a constructor. So let's see where this error is at. It says new Google map.webgl overlay view. So let's look at that. This is it. So new google.maps, new google.maps.web. So our web should start with a capital. Great. And let's refresh. Go back to our console. This WebGL overlay view is not. So let's check it again. It says web GL overlay view. So web GL should be caps as well. So web GL overlay view. Let's run it again. Okay, now we don't have any major error. Now we don't have any major error. Now you see our map styles and everything have changed, but we need to keep adding some few codes to it. Now let's go to our on context restored. So on context restored, the first thing we need to add is some constructor here. We call it GL. Okay. So this GL is going to be doing some few stuff. Now we need to initialize our renderer. Okay, so remember we created a variable called renderer. This is what we need to initialize here. So renderer is equal to new three dot web GL renderer. Okay, great. WebGL renderer. The next thing we need is create a canvas that will serve as the base map wherein we can put our 3D stuff. So we say gl.canvas. Okay, the next thing we need to create is to create a context. We say context is gl. Okay, now create this. This is gl.get context attributes. Great. Okay. So right now, what we're going to be doing is we need to create a function inside our renderer and grab this canvas and the context into our renderer. Great. Now that we have our renderer, we need to clear the renderer automatically. So we need to say renderer auto clear is equal to false. Okay. Now we're done with on context restore. The next thing we need to do is we need to start drawing on our map. All right. We've created a whole lot of stuff. Now we need to start drawing on our map. So when we look at our map, when we look at this, when we refresh, we have all we have this nice stuffs on the map. Now this is we have what we've done so far. We have created the avenue so that we'll be able to put anything we want on the map. So now that we're getting started, let's start putting stuffs on the map. So we need to create a variable. We're going to call it lat long altitude literal. So we're going to have our latitude, our longitude, our altitude, and let's say literal. You can name this whatever you want, but I must let name it latitude, longitude, altitude, literal. So let's open it. The first thing we need is our latitude. For latitude, let's grab it from our map options. So let's say map options dot center dot lat. Great. Now let's grab our longitude. Let's say map options dot center dot longitude. Great. Next thing is an altitude. So let's put it. We need to put the pole directly on the map. We want it to be straight on the map. We don't want it to raise. So we're going to set the altitude to 0. Okay. Great. Now that we have longitude, latitude, altitude, we need to create a matrix. So first thing, before we do that, what we need to do is we need to update camera matrix. Update the camera matrix to ensure that the model, the model is the pole that we're going to put. Geo-referenced. So anytime we change our map view, the poles and everything needs to be adjusted correctly. Great. Now we create a variable, we call it matrix. So this matrix will be doing a whole lot of calculations. So the first thing is a transformer that is going to make sure that anytime the map is transformed, transformer dot from lat long altitude. So anytime we have a change, so we need to put our lat long altitude lateral here. Great. Next thing we need to do is to set up our camera to follow it as it moves. So we say camera dot projection matrix. Okay, is equal to new 3 dot matrix. Okay, matrix 4 dot from array. From array, then we put in our matrix. Boom. Now we need to draw it. So we need to request it first. So we say WebGL overlay view dot request draw. We request redraw instead of draw. So request redraw. The next thing we need to render is we say renderer dot render. So we need to add the scene. Then we need to add our camera. Next thing is to reset the state. So renderer dot reset state. The next thing we need is to just set our WebGL. So now that we have this, let's run our first example to see what we have. So this is our example one. Let's refresh the page. Let's see if we have some errors. Great. So we have some errors. We have dozens of them. Now let's look at these errors and fix them right away. So we have a transformer is not defined. Okay, so transformer is not defined. So this is our transformer. So cost matrix is equal to transformer dot from lat long altitude. Now on draw, we need to push some few stuff here. So first we need to push these constructions. We have our GL and we have our transformer. Great. So we have in it, we have our overlay view on add. We have our three scene perspective, ambient light, directional light, GLTF loader. We have a directional light dot set position, scene dot add, source loader dot load. We have our source GLTF. We have the scene. We have the rotation. So let's cut this out for now. Now we add the model to the scene. We have WebGL overlay view dot on context restored. We create a GS renderer using the maps WebGL rendering context. So we create the renderer. We have the WebGL overlay view on draw. We have this. We have the matrix, projection matrix 3, matrix 4 from array. WebGL overlay view request redraw, renderer, and reset state, and this. Now let's save it and run our code. So boom. So now you see we have this pole on the map. All right. So we have this pole on the map. All right. So this pole is what we're going to be putting markers on. So we're going to be putting markers on this pole. So let's check an example, and we're going to continue in the next tutorial. So to add a marker, so let's just say const marker is equal to new Google Maps marker. I think we have the map, and we have position. Our position is going to be lat is latitude, long is longitude. See if this works out. Doesn't we just look it up? Didn't work out. So let's just say let's just check it up. So developers. So let's just say how to add a map. How to add a just say drawing on the where is it? We have let's just say a marker. So let's just get a basic marker, right? Let's just get a basic marker. So this is a basic marker that we want. So let's just replace this. So my lat long, just say this. Grab this, just put it up here. And the lat is going to be our latitude. The long is going to be our longitude. Great. So let's refresh. Now we have a marker. All right. Now we have a marker like this. So we need to push this marker up. Okay. So let's push it up. So if you want to push it up, you add an alt, which is the altitude. So the altitude for our overlay view was 0. All right. But of the height of the pole, we need to make sure that our altitude is on top of the pole. So let's see our marker. Our marker is not moving. Okay, before we can add altitudes and stuff to our markers, we need to use the advanced markers. We need to use the advanced markers. So to use the advanced markers, all we need to do is to change this new Google Maps. So let's just create a variable. Let's just say const marker is equal to new Google Maps dot marker dot advanced. So we have an advanced marker, and then we have this advanced marker view, right? Great. First one, we have our map, we have our position, and we have a little title. So let's just refresh. So now that we have our marker, let's see. Advanced marker view. Put the map on top. We have our position, a lat long. Let's set the altitude to 50, and let's refresh. Come on. So this advanced marker view has some few stuffs that we need to put in place before it actually functions. So let's create it real quick. So pin view, call the pin view. So the pin view is equal to new Google dot maps dot marker dot pin view. So pin view is going to have a glyph. The glyph is like an icon. Gonna have a glyph. So our glyph is just going to be let's just say a simple icon in HTML. We're going to say I class equal to material icons and you just say camera, and we have our glyph. The next thing we need is our glyph color. So we need our glyph color. Let's just say white. We need a background. So background, let's say blue. Let's just make it like that. So content is going to be, so let's add this content. So pin view dot element. Okay. So let's refresh. So let's refresh. We don't have it. So we have a background error. So we need to spell our background right. So background B. So let's refresh, and our glyph isn't working well. So let's see. So we need to create something like an element. Okay, so let's create something. Let's call it the icon. Let's create a constant called icon is equal to document dot create element, right? So we need to create a div where we're going to put this icon inside. So we have our div, and we say icon dot inner HTML. Okay, is equal to, and we grab this glyph that we just created. We grab this glyph, and we just put the icon here. Okay, so let's refresh our page. Now we see we have our camera. Our camera is working fine, but we still need to make it go up. So let's just change this to like a map. We still need to make the altitude go up. So let's just make the altitude like 150. Let's see. Is it still at the same place? We want this to be on top like this. Like this. Great. So to put it on top, we need to give it, so we have, no, instead of alt, we say altitude. So that's the problem. Say altitude. Great. Now altitude is way up. So let's make it back to 50. Refresh, and boom. So we have this. Okay. So now we have this. So we have our pole with our icon on it. Nice. Really, really nice. Now what we need to do is We can change this background. Let's make it green. Let's make this glyph black. We could give it a border. So let's give it some border. Let's give it some let's give it some border. Let's say border color. Let's say let's give it a border color of black. Border black. So let's just make the glyph white. So it's becomes nice. The next thing we need to do is let's refresh. The next thing we need to do, we have you see we have this white, we have this pole is green. So that's the last thing we're going to do for this tutorial. We're going to make the pole green. Okay. And then in the next tutorial we're going to create the content info window right next to it. So let's go to our code and let's go down to our GLTF load. So where we load our GLTF, this is where we load it. So inside here, let's say change color. Changing color, we have the GLTF transverse option. So we have our GLTF dot scene dot transverse. Okay, so trans traverse instead. So traverse, then it's a function. So traverse function. Parameter we put in it is the child. Okay, and then we call it. First thing we need to do is if we check if the child is a mesh, which means the source that we've loaded. So if child dot is mesh, okay, if it's a mesh, that means we can access it and create and reconfigure it. So the first thing we need to do is to create a material new three dot mesh basic material. Then create these constructors. We need to change the color. So we say the color is, let's give it a green. Boom. The next thing we need to do is we need to set the material. So we say child dot material is equal to material. Great. So we're done with our poll. Now let's refresh and bam, our poll is green. So let's make our poll red. So let's make our poll red and bam, our poll is red. So let's change it to like a green back. Okay. So in the next tutorial, we're going to learn how to put the side content bar like this. We're going to put the side content bar to it in the next tutorial. Thanks for watching. If you've not subscribed to the channel, please do so that we get more encouraged to create more magnificent contents like this.